known as Arun to all of us, someone who has been doing a lot of work in the open access movement across India. Uh, just to start with, as we go along, you'll know more and more about Arun. His campaigns on open access have been legendary. He's opened eyes to what is the potential of open access, why it is important in the world of academic writing, how it is different but relates to other movements for knowledge openness and knowledge sharing, why it is particularly important for countries like India. But to start with, the first question I'd like to pose to Arun is we often get confused between open access, which is your movement, open source, free software, Creative Commons, many related things. How would you posit open access against the others? What is the difference and what is the similarity?
Okay. Open source software movement was probably one of the earliest to take place in the openness movement. And like Linus Torvald and even before them, people are thinking of those things. Open access specifically because it involves a large number of scientists and scholars, social scientists, historians, and all kinds of scholarly people, mostly academics and also in a laboratory wherever research is performed. Now, these people produce a lot of new knowledge, as they call it. In fact, there's a famous product of knowledge, a 3-volume book published from USA long back when I used to teach information science in the 70s. I used to see them. And this is a well-known area, especially among librarians and information professionals, but more relevant to scientists and scholars, academics, and people performing research in other areas, law, medicine, and so on. But for a very long time, what happened was, when the new knowledge is produced, people used to write what they call papers, research papers, or present them in conferences. These are the two major channels by which knowledge was given away to others. And there are others like reports, theses, and all, but the main ones are journal articles and conference proceedings.
So basically, Doctor, it would be right to say, Arun, it would be right to say that open access deals with academic writing, as against open source, which deals with software.
Okay, open source is for software, maybe other things as well. Open access is largely for academic scholarly writing, not necessarily only in the area of science and the other areas which are taught in the regular universities, but also in law, medicine, and innovation and things like that. So you are by and large correct to say it is about academic writing, but it also includes other writing. For example, many people write fiction, non-fiction, or journalists and so on. They can make their work open and make it available, freely accessible to people. For example, if I want to scan New York Times, they let me scan a few papers a month, a few articles a month, and then they say your quota is over, you have to subscribe. Luckily now, the Institute of Science has been given a complimentary subscription, so I get to read free. Otherwise, Hindu, for example, doesn't allow me to read. Of course, I get a paper copy at home, but if I want to refer back to an article about a month ago, I don't keep those papers at home. I want to go and check on the net. Hindu doesn't allow me to do that for a large number of cases. They allow only a small number per month or something. So, but there are journals like Tribune, for example, in Punjab, Chandigarh. They let me read any number of articles they publish. So open access is for journalists as well. And there are some science writers whose articles appear in the paywall newspapers like the Hindu, but they make it accessible through a website, which is a common website for all journalists. They can put their paper. I mean, you must be knowing but right now I forget the name. They make it available. So it's not
But
necessarily for academics.
doctor, just to explain the basics. Open access is a movement which started around. Could you give a little bit of the history when it started and why it
Okay,
came about? Why it came about, so that people could understand why it's important.
Sure. It started way back, let me say, in modern times, around 1991, I should say, when a person called Paul Ginspar, a particle physicist at the Los Alamos National Laboratory, wanted to make all particle physics papers easily accessible to particle physicists everywhere in the world. So what he did was, he suggested to particle physicists that if they could send him a copy of the preprint or whatever, he will make it available to people. Remember, it was pre-internet days. There was no net. So he made it available through other means. Later on, when the internet came along, it became easier. And then the second major step was around 2001, late November, December. There was this Budapest open access initiative, largely thanks to George Soros and this Open
Society Foundation.
Open Society Foundation, or OSI or OSF. And later it became Open Society Foundations and something like that.
The rather controversial George Soros, but who has been doing a lot of interesting work
let us forget this controversy. But he gave the money. He had a good heart, I should say.
Yeah.
He had other problems. Let us not worry about that.
Doctor, could you move your screen a bit so we could see your face? Yeah. Otherwise, it's it's half. Yeah. Closer, or maybe a bit so that your face moves up. Yeah. Now it's fine. Carry on. Carry on.
Okay.
Yeah. So you were saying George Soros supported the
initiative. He supported, and he convened a meeting. Open Society Foundation convened a meeting in Hungary, in Budapest. They invited 16 people, including their own staff. So these 16 people met for a couple of days, and then they decided what we should do about making knowledge freely accessible to people. And that was a kind of a lot of arguments and so on. And out of the 16 people, one person was in favor of making things available through repositories. The others were all conventional people, I should say. They have been used to seeing papers in journals, and therefore they wanted to continue the journals. Now, 15 against 1, but Dr. Harnard, Professor Harnard, Stephen Harnard, a cognitive scientist at that time working in Southampton and also having dual citizenship in Canada and UK, he prevailed. He said, let us compromise, we will have both. And said, but the repository should be the first priority and then the journal.
So basically, we are talking about academic writing, which would be shared rather than sold in the commercial sense. So the open access movement is trying to make academic writing accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
Rather than selling it at a very high cost.
Yeah, high cost or low cost? No cost they wanted.
Yeah.
They wanted to make it available at no cost. Now, the open access journal they wanted to create. At that time, there was no open access journal. So the 16 wise people who met at Budapest decided they should find a way by which new journals, which are called open access journals, could be started. And in the meanwhile, Harnard put up this proposal and said we will have repositories. And the moment he went back to Southampton, he started working. He put together a small team of young fellows and created what's called a software for repositories, archiving, self-archiving things. Okay,
what was it called? What was it called?
Self-archiving. So, the process is called self-archiving. I write a paper, I myself archive it.
Yeah.
For that, he created a software called ePrints, capital E, capital P, RINTS, ePrints. Not he, his team, young fellows. Some of them are still there in Southampton. Okay, ePrints. This is the first open access software ever to be produced in the world. It was somewhere around 2001, 2000, or maybe 2000, let us say 2000. I can get the correct date. Offhand, I cannot tell you, around that time. ePrints. And then MIT and one company, I think HP or somebody, they started working on that, and they made what's called D space, D capital, S capital, PACE, D space. They started on that. And then there are so many now. There are at least 15 or 20 different software available today for making things open in academia. So Fedora, for example, there's so many others now. And along that, there are people who started open access journals. One of them was a company called BMC, Biomed Central. Vic Trax, his name is Vic Trax, a Jewish guy. Vic Trax, T-R-A-C-Z, I think, Vic Trax. Victor Trax or something, but people call him Vic Trax. And Vic Trax started his company in London, and with some started with about 20 or 30 biology journals, and 20 or 30 biology journals. Yeah, right. Okay. Today, the company he sold it to somebody else. Now they are running more than 300 journals. It grew very fast.
What was that called? What was that called again?
BMC, Biomed Central. Biomed Central. Bio for biology, med for medicine.
Yeah.
Central is for operation being centralized. Biomed Central. He's a very brilliant guy and a great businessman. He had academic ideas and business mind. He is something like Gene Garfield, a combined intellectual prowess with business competence.
Doctor, a bit of distance from your screen because we can't see your full face. And
now is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Vic Trax and Gene Garfield are two iconic figures. Although Garfield is far better known than Trax, but Trax deserves some importance because he thought of open access journals and created an organization and made them freely accessible to people. And I had visited an office in London. It was very small, 2 rooms only, and there are about 20, 30 people working, but they produced marvelous stuff at that time.
Very path-breaking and changing the way knowledge is created and shared in the world.
I mean, actually, in my opinion, he is not as well known as he should be. Of course, we all know Dr. Garfield. I mean, everybody talks about him because he produced so many other products also.
What's the site? We are talking about DSpace, or this is the next site?
No, again, please.
What is the site that they produced?
No,
what is their website?
The second person is called Eugene Garfield. Eugene O'Neill. Eugene Garfield, the cat Garfield.
Right.
Yeah, Garfield, he created an organization called Institute for Scientific Information.
Yeah.
He started as a chemical information person. Even when a PhD student in Columbia, sorry, not a PhD student, as a master's student in Columbia, he wrote a paper in 1955 in Science about the idea of citation and how all knowledge can be linked. This is Garfield. Yeah, you are right. Yeah. So he created that. He is a genius, outstanding human being, absolutely top class brilliance. If there were a Nobel Prize in this area, he should have been the first to get it. He was called an information scientist, but he is far more than an information scientist. He's a great humanist. He made some money, but he also donated a lot of money to different causes. Actually, he is a kind of a mixture of a capitalist and a communist, both. He derives his capitalism from 2 of his uncles. He lost his father, in the sense he deserted his mother and children and went away. Okay. So his mother was taken care of by some other person, and his uncles were living with them or close by. And one of the two uncles were in business, some kind of business, and one of them was in business, one of them was kind of a socialist. So he drew sustenance from both of them, simultaneously acquired a taste for both capitalism and socialism, and that it reflected throughout his life. He made money and he also gave away to good causes.
Doctor, a little bit distance from the screen, please.
Okay,
Little distance from the screen.
Okay. I'm
Otherwise-
sorry, I'm
otherwise
not
your
used to this. Okay.
No problem.
Okay,
No
okay,
problem. It's
okay.
fine now.
Great. Now it's okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Carry on.
Bye. So
Carry
Darwin introduced a revolution in searching information. Like if you want to find out a paper that is relevant to your work, suppose you are working in, say, some neurological problems, say research in Alzheimer's disease, for example, you would like to see the latest papers written by others. Now that there are hundreds of journals, it becomes impossible for you to go to a library and search all the journals. Now, originally what they did was, they used to have what are called abstracting journals. For each field, there used to be an abstracting journal or more. For example, there was what is called, now it's called Medline. The olden days it was called
Biomed? No.
no. I'll let you later when I remember. Medline. And also there was one by the company which is now called Elsevier. They also produced one. Okay, there were two at that time. The one was produced by NIH, National Institute of Health in USA. That is the most important one. The Elsevier one is a commercial one, but it is much smaller, but they made big money anyway.
Medlards probably. I'm Google.
Medline is a later one. That's a later name. The original one is something PubMed. PubMed. Okay. PubMed. Okay, they made it. Medlar, PubMed, the series. They kept coming also with the facilities and so on. It became online and so on. So you have to know that. That is only mostly medical literature. Suppose if you are also interested in how it affects society, you would like to see socialist therapy. You get it there very rarely. This man thought all knowledge is one. You can't distinguish knowledge between physics, chemistry, biology, sociology. All knowledge is universal and they are one. So he wanted to produce a database which will cover everything. So he called it Science Citation Index. And then he pulled together all of them, most importance. It increased from 3,000, 6,000. So now it's
8,000 journals.
Then it is to 6,000, etc. You can see in that your website, the Web of Science website. Increased that. And they are able to link the most important finding or contribution of Dr. Garfield is that we not only discover papers that was relation between papers. I have okay, again. I come what he was and she got she thought we should go and experiment the laboratory all that find out new things. And we found out of new treatment. One I get you the name too. For example, for migraine, he found out a cure.
to log
Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay,
Hi, we are back. Sorry for that. Sorry for that
okay, no
breakdown.
problem.
Just if you could keep the screen a bit away from you so that we can see, yeah, more of you. Yeah, that's it. Fine, perfect.
Now it's
You
okay.
can yeah, you can see in the screen how exactly you would appear. So
Oh,
sorry to our viewers for the interruption. We had a bit of a technical glitch. Apart from that, the east coast of India is facing a
oh, oh,
cyclone today. And the bandwidth was a bit low, but now it seems to be fine. So we'll
okay.
hold on in it. Today evening, we are talking with Subaya Arunachalam about the benefits of open source, open access, the history of the movement, how it came about, what it means for academia in all parts of the world, particularly in countries like India. And in the first part of our session, before this small gap, Subaya Arunachalam, or Arun as we all know him, who has been a very prominent pioneer and promoter of open access in India and in different parts of the world, has been telling us about the roots of the movement and where it came about. Okay, we don't want to clutter the debate with too many technical terms, because all the pointers are there on the net and you can easily find out what's the meaning of gold open access, green root, whatever it is, all these technical concepts which I myself get confused about. But Arun will also has been explaining to us the history of the movement and where it started and from where it grew from the 1990s till it made a tremendous impact on academic publishing worldwide. So, apart from the history, which maybe we could recommend the open access page on Wikipedia for people who want to find out more about. Apart from that, Arun, could you tell us why it is relevant, particularly to countries like India? Why is it important? We have commercial models. We have people who have been selling academic knowledge for ages. They've been making a ton of money out of it. Profits are huge, sometimes at obscene rates of returns. Why is open access important, particularly in third world, so-called third world countries? Please go on.
The number of people doing research or number of people who are in the business of knowledge. I mean, I don't mean business. I mean in the activity of creating knowledge or sharing knowledge is constantly growing because they are increasing in education budgets, uh, building new laboratories, building new universities, building new institutes of technology, and so on. And new laboratories under different heads like CSIR, DSA, DBT, and so on. So, uh, as more and more people coming to do research, volume of research production also increases. So we do a lot of research. I do a lot of research. We need to know a lot of results were in the world. So this is an activity which is done essentially by standing on the shoulders of giants, as Sir Isaac Newton said ages ago. So if you want something, if you want to see, if you stand up on the shoulders of something, if you stand up on a two-story building, you can see them. So the idea is already there have been people have done something. You make those and go further. That's the idea. So you need to know what has been by others, not only here but also elsewhere, not in now but also in the past. So across time and space, whatever is done, the way of production of knowledge should be accessible to you, so you can produce new knowledge. This is basic idea of knowledge production. Now, to be able to do that, you need to get all these things, fraudulent proceedings, all these pieces, and so on. Now, it costs money to obtain to production of those things, the paper, the printing, and things like that. Plus, the organization to produce those, they, uh, they set up all that. Now, it can reduce that cost or it is not available to you unless transition, it takes effect. Like police are the open movement foundation for the clocks and later um, which also turned to the post movement. Especially countries like India, Egypt, or Brazil, or South Africa, tremendous number of people doing research. They are people for institution. So we should be able to provide also all the facilities. Now, this is the rate of growth of knowledge. Okay, you have to pay for something. The rate of discovery, rate of knowledge, and so on. So, if one has to build is a sure way. Now, how to do that? The knowledge is produced by people like you and me. From different thinkers, people like that. Now, they need a method way to do publishing.
see. Yeah. If you have too many windows open, no, that could be a bit of a problem. Let me also get close here and see whether the sound amplification improve or
Okay, now almost all of them are closed.
much better, much
Gmail, our current link, only two are open now.
very good.
Okay.
Much better. So Arun, amidst the interruptions and amidst the tropical cyclone on the east coast of India, Arun was letting us know about the roots of open access and why it is important to India, and also why it makes it much more affordable for people to access scholarly knowledge, which is so critical for any research activity in a country, in a middle income country, or even a country struggling to get ahead, which cannot afford the cost of many academic and other commercially priced journals, which open access acts as a very useful tool for. So if you could just sum up the argument, because maybe we might have missed some of the finer points you were making.
Okay.
And you say that countries like India, South Africa.
Yes. Okay. In these countries, a large number of people are doing research, and the number is constantly increasing. Therefore, they need more access to information to do research. Because everybody needs information access to be able to do research. And now, the conventional way of providing this information access is through journals that cost a lot of money. Now, these countries obviously cannot afford that much money. When the number was small, they could afford. When the numbers increase, they cannot. Now, that problem is faced. And also the inflation and things like this always happening, it becomes more and more difficult. If things were available for free, to that extent, one can do research faster, better.
Okay, so you are saying they should be available for free. Then the question comes up: if they are available for free, who pays for them?
Yes, good question. Yeah. Now, let us take a group of people who do research. Let us say 100 people are doing research. These 100 people can exchange what they do with each other. This is exactly what Paul Ginsberg was doing. When Paul Ginsberg started what is called archive, A-R capital X-I-V, archive, A-R capital X-I-V, archive. So this was started in Los Alamos National Laboratory, where Paul Ginsberg was a junior physicist. He was a young fellow. He started it. At that time, people used to send by whatever means, by post or fax or whatever. Okay. In those days, it was telex, maybe they send them. There was no net at that time. Okay. So he was able to share it with so many other physicists. To that extent, they did not have to wait for a journal, but they all could get what others were doing. Right now, archive has completed 30 years, a little more than 30, and there are more than 2 million papers in that, 2 million preprints, what they call preprints. A paper is something which is published after review in a journal and things like that. They call it a preprint.
Before
So
it is published, you can submit a copy before it is edited and published.
Yeah, you are right. As soon as you finish your research, if you think it is worth publishing, instead of sending it to a journal, you send it to archive. And then it will be seen by so many people. And there are some questions at that time. If it is not reviewed by others, anybody can send junk. what would happen? Then
Yeah.
it was not a good question, because if hundreds and thousands of people are going to see what I write, I would be careful not to send junk. I wouldn't like to be looked as an idiot. So I would self-censor myself before I put a paper, especially when I know thousands of people are seeing that every day. So that is one check. And another is, um, you will get caught very soon. If you publish junk twice or thrice, I mean, people would come to know. Then nobody would look at your paper later on. So you would lose your uh, credit as a scientist, credibility. So
Yeah.
so it never happens that way. Recently, there was some research. At least two papers I have seen recently, uh, where they checked what was published in a preprint archive and what was published later in a reviewed journal. More than 90% or 85% of those were almost the same. Only in a few cases there was minor or somewhat more modifications. So preprint archives are as good as that. Also, there have been many cases where from reviewed journals, uh, top journals like Nature, uh, papers are withdrawn by authors after um, others pointed out errors. So all this reviewing is the only kind of a facade. It doesn't really work that well. So on both sides, from the archive side, more than 85% of papers that appear in archive do not get changed at all when they go and get published in the journal. And from the journal side,
Interesting. Yeah.
hundreds,
Interesting.
yeah, please.
Sorry, doctor, carry on.
Okay. Hundreds of papers which are published in reviewed journals have been withdrawn, retracted. They call it retracted. There is a journal called Retraction something, where they document all these things.
Right. Very interesting, and it's fascinating to see the different pages of archive which we have also been trying to do while we were talking. But at the same time, Arun, that brings us to the question of open access and India.
Yeah.
What has been its history? What has been its role? What has been its acceptance? What has been its problem?
Okay.
Your sound is coming through perfect. If we can see a little bit of your face, more of your face, that would be even better.
Now it's okay.
And yeah, now it's perfect. Now both sound and image are perfect.
Okay,
Please carry on.
Now, I have a back problem, so I tend to slouch. No, it's okay. No problem.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, no, don't worry. I'm 80 plus, so
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, honestly,
India.
Okay.
Yeah, India.
I think perhaps the earliest voice from India was mine. My first public talk on open access was in Rio de Janeiro in 2000, middle Rio. There is a person called Abel Packer. He was heading PAHO, P-A-H-O, which is kind of a WHO subsidiary in South America. He's a Brazilian speaking Portuguese and a little bit of English. He was looking for an international meeting. It is the International Federation of Science Editors meeting. He was looking for somebody from Asia. There was hardly anybody you could locate. Then there was a medical editor, was a Baha'i, was driven out of Iran, went to some Latin American country, Chile or Mexico or someplace. Momen, Dr. Momen. He talked to Momen, and Momen talked to a person called Syed Etasham Hassan in India, a very highly reputed biologist. And then Syed Hassan suggested you could call Arun. So then they found out and called me, would you please come? Then I went there.
This was in which year?
2000. Yeah, about 22 years ago. That was my first public talk. But my colleague, a friend of mine called Gunasekaran, he tells me, sir, you have already talked about it even before that, but I'm not able to locate anything now, because all my correspondence when I was in Swaminathan Foundation was done from their address, MSSRF mail. but I'm not able to trace any of them now because all the colleagues have left and they don't know which server where. They were not very highly proficient in computers like you are. You are able to locate immediately everything. They were not able to do all that. So
In those days, it was tough also. In those days, actually, no one knew which, post boxes. We could not store like
no,
Gmail and things
the
like
server could have had, but they didn't.
that.
I
Okay.
don't know. They missed everything, and I lost everything there. Doesn't matter. It's but I remember most of those things. So this was the
Okay.
first official talk I gave, and I could send you the talk in a couple of days. I have to search for it and then send you.
Definitely. Please do.
I will
Please
do
do.
that.
That would be
I
very
will do that.
interesting. Yeah.
That was my first talk, where
Yeah.
I actually talked about OAI. That was a wrong abbreviation because it means something else. What I thought was open access um, uh,
Initiative.
uh,
Initiative.
initiative or something.
Initiative. Yeah.
No, something like a repository or something like
Okay.
that. So I mentioned that there. So I
Yeah.
spoke about it, and then before then, even before I went to uh, Brazil, I had invited
Yeah.
Professor Stephen Harnard to come to India uh, to celebrate the 75th birthday of Dr. Eugene Garfield. See, I am called an information scientist for whatever reason. And Garfield happens to be the number one information scientist of a whole century or generation. So I thought I should honor him, and I uh, hosted a meeting in Swaminathan Foundation. Although it is not there, the Swaminathan Foundation is essentially for development. They have nothing to do with information. But Swaminathan was very kind. He said, "Okay, I won't go ahead." And then I even asked him money. So he said, "I don't have money." Then he said, "Okay." He called somebody from Larsen and Toubro and asked for some money, and he gave some money. So I was able to bring Stephen Harnard and another person called Alan Gilchrist from London. In that, before I invited him because I had read Stephen Harnard's paper called Scholarly Skywriting. Scholarly skywriting. The idea was if you put up in a paper or a blackboard, only people who can access that paper, see that paper can read. But if you put it on the sky, something like a star, everybody can look up and see that. So he said scholarly skywriting. So I mean, fantastic phrase he used. That paper I had read. Although in the first reading I did not understand fully. I got some idea, but not fully. Because my own preparation was not that good at that time. But I knew there is something fantastic there. So I said, "You should come." He agreed. So I raised some money from British Council and from Larsen and Toubro and all. All the meetings I ever conducted without any money. I'm a pauper. I don't have money. But I always depended upon some agency, and most of the people helped me. So I'm very grateful to all of them. He came there and he gave a talk. Yeah, that talk took place after I gave a talk in Brazil. I met Hornard for the first time in Brazil face to face, and he was upset. "You have been asking me to come to India, but when is the meeting? Tell me. He said. I told him, "Look, I invited you out of my enthusiasm, but I have to gather some money to invite you. How would I pay for your hotel? How would I pay for your airfare? So I have no money. I'm waiting for the money to come." And then he said, "Oh, I see. Do it quickly," he said. Luckily, I could organize that in 2000 itself. He came. That is how I had been having this idea even before 2000. Ever since I read and not fully understood the paper of Arnold. Anyway, that's okay. Then that was the first time. Then when I came back in the Institute of Science, two of my friends, Dr. Rajshekhar and now Dr. Francis, at that time Mr. Francis Jayakant, they were working hard to set up repositories both for research papers and for thesis. Um, um, they used ePrint software to set up a repository for the Institute of Science papers only. They used that. That came around.
Institute of Science in Bangalore. Institute of
Yeah,
Science in
Bangalore.
Bangalore.
That came in 2002. They started work in 2001. Actually, the work was virtually done by Francis. Okay, although Rajshekar was the head of the unit and he had some ideas, but the work was done entirely by Francis in the name of a trainee student,
Francis who?
Francis Jayakant. Let us not go into the details now because it's a very sad story.
Okay.
Francis Jayakant is one of the most outstanding human beings, a true Christian. I am an atheist, but I have great respect for him. He's a true Christian. He believes in the Lord, and he doesn't do anything unethical in his life. He's so honest. Even when people harmed him, he would not do any hatred for them. Such a nice gentleman. And he was ill-treated by the Institute of Science. For a very long time, he was not promoted at all. All his juniors, all his students were already full-fledged librarians in universities at the grade of a professor. And this man was, till recently, was an assistant. The Institute of Science, many of them are my friends. The directors, the deputy directors, I don't know what to say. They never did anything worthwhile for him, which is blasphemous, I should say. Anyway, but he did fantastic work. And even today, he is doing that. He's a remarkable human being. I mean, the country should honor such people rather than the Tendulkars and, people who really work hard. I mean, people who really produce something worthwhile under great adversity, conditions of adversity. Okay. They set it up first. The actual setup was done by Francis and that team. And I forget the name of the student, but I will remember. There is a paper, I can remember that. But I was talking about it, but he was doing that. That credit should be given to him. Okay, now.
This is which year?
2002. It came up in 2002. That history is there. History of that Indian Institute of Science open access repository is there. It's available. Okay, it's recorded. Okay. The student was there in 2001 and 2002. That's a 1.5 year course. And the thesis work was given to him in the last 6 months. And although it was the thesis was in the name of the student, I'm sure it was on by Francis. Okay, anyway. Okay, that's the first thing. And they also did another using DSpace for thesis. Two things they did. This was the first, ePrints was the first, and then DSpace also. This is because they were training students. They wanted them to acquire skills. So that was a remarkable program. NCSI, National Center for Science Information. About it, I will tell you some other day. Okay, that was the one. And later, of course, when Harnad and others came to my institute foundation here, Swaminathan Foundation, we conducted several workshops. I brought 2 people from UK, one from UK, one from Canada. And again, in the name of Swaminathan Foundation, Indian Academy of Sciences, and Indian Institute of Science. 3 big names I had. So, co-sponsoring 2 back-to-back 3-day workshops on electronic publishing. The 2 people were from what is called the Electronic Publishing Trust, EPT. Okay, they were trustees of EPT. Later on, I also became a trustee. They came and conducted 2 3-day workshops, and 25 people each. Total of 50 people were trained in electronic publishing from various government organizations, private publishers, and all. Out of them, one of them became a world leader, I should say. He's a Bombay. He's a doctor, a pediatrician from KEM College. KEM Hospital? Yeah, KEM Hospital, yeah. And Seth GS Medical College or something, attached to the hospital. He did his MD in pediatrics. His name is D.K. Sahu, S-A-H-U, D.K. Sahu. Hardly anything you will find on the net. He has simply vanished. Nobody knows where he is. Okay. In fact, I'm kind of afraid that something wrong must have happened. I mean, I don't know what. Otherwise, he would not remain incommunicado with me. He's such a close friend. He has helped me a lot in my international travels. In Bombay, whenever I went for visa or travel and all, he used to arrange for a taxi, arrange for a guest house. He'll come in person and help me and all. But later on, I completely lost touch with him, and nobody knows where he is now.
I remember Sahu, Dr. Sahu, who was a pediatrician, and along the way he discovered that he liked publishing more,
Yeah, same
and he
man,
pioneered this
same
this he
man.
pioneered this series, young man
Medno,
series,
Medno.
Bedno.
Yeah, same man.
He pioneered the series of about maybe 36 or
Yeah,
35
yeah. Now, of
journals.
course, it was taken by
Yeah,
another European publisher. Is now having 300 journals, and this European
yeah,
publisher threatened him actually. One by one, he was withdrawing the societies from him, and then he saw the complete thing would collapse and forced him to sell at a low price, along with all the software, along with all the know-how and all.
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
not only the name, everything. I mean, it was ridiculous. He did that, this publisher. Uh, this is how the publishers work. That is why I hate them actually. These commercial publishers, I
Yeah.
hate them literally. Okay.
They can be very
Yeah,
cutthroat,
yeah,
and
yeah. I mean, for people like us, unimaginable things are happening like that. Okay. Anyway,
it is one set of people who builds up the assets, and it's someone else who
yeah, yeah.
controls it finally.
So Sahu was trained by us.
I see.
Okay, okay. Well, he was already doing things. He was already publishing journals. That is how he came to our workshop. Then he learned about
Yeah.
this from these two experts and went back and
Yeah.
converted to open access and things like that. So, and he was quite grateful to me and was always he looked up to me as some kind of a benefactor. Although
I
he is
see.
far ahead in his knowledge, in his competence, in his skills, in his computing skills, in his knowledge, medical knowledge, everything. But for some reason,
Yeah.
he thought I did something good for him, and he was very grateful to me. And
Because you all also build a ideological justification and rationale for the promotion of this movement, isn't it?
whatever.
In that
You know,
sense.
once when I was invited to a conference, I used to be invited for almost every conference in West world or workshop. Once I was invited to Italy for a meeting
Yeah.
in a medium-sized town. I forget the name now. That town has one of the oldest universities in the world. Some 850 years, 900 years old universities there.
Padua,
Maybe
somewhere.
Padua,
No,
maybe Padua, maybe Torino, some
okay, okay,
university. Uh,
okay.
I don't have records because all the records are in the MS server machine.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, anyway, and I also have Alzheimer's, so I forget things. Okay, no problem.
yeah.
There were 10 years ago, I would have reeled facts and figures to the 10th decimal. But now,
I remember that. I
now
remember that. Don't worry.
I'm having this neuro problem. It doesn't matter. It
Don't worry.
doesn't matter. Really.
Don't worry.
Anyway, I'm in the good doctor care as well as family care. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I took him. I told the organizers, it's not just me. I would like to bring a colleague of mine. You should pay for him as well. They said, by all means, they said. So they paid for both airfare as well as residence and food, everything they paid for both. We went there. Luckily, both of us are vegetarians. Sahu is a Jain, I think. I don't know,
I see.
but I
I
guess
see.
he's a Jain. So he is also a vegetarian. So we searched for vegetarian food together. We explored.
Sure. Yeah.
And he introduced him to a lot of people, and he was even interviewed by what is his name, Ricky Poinder later on. So I gave him a lot of connections. Whomever I knew, I introduced him. It was very good for him for that visit. He is one of the great pioneers of open access in India. Later on, he conducted a meeting in that college attached to KM Hospital. Is it Seth GS Medical College? What is it college? In Parel.
Probably, I think Seth GS
Okay,
Medical
in
College.
that college, he is a superstar. Every professor liked him. Every professor
Right.
liked him. He organized a meeting to which all the international leaders of open access came. I was able to help him, and he put us all up in a cricket control board guest house, CCI, in a five-star hotel overlooking the sea. And I mean, I said, why are you spending so much money, Sahu? I asked him. And he said, sir, you are all great people. This is a little thing I should tell you. such a generous person, I tell you.
I see.
Okay, anyway, he came. He is one of the great pioneers in open access in India. He created new software for editing and publishing and all. All that he gave away to this commercial publisher, who owns it now. Anyway,
Yeah.
then in around 2004, 2005 or 6, I convened an international conference workshop. But then I thought, what is the point only doing in India? It should be for all of developing world, particularly China. So then I wrote to China and I said, if half a dozen people from China could come and attend our workshop, it would be good. Together, we can promote openness in our region. And I also invited people from South Africa, from Brazil, and the other developing countries in East Asia, except Pakistan, because I couldn't do that at that time. I wanted to, but it was not possible to invite people from Pakistan at that time. So a lot of people came. And 6 people I invited from China. 5 could come, 1 could not come. He could, because the visa was, the approval from Indian government went late after the conference started. So for all 5 of them, we paid for travel, for hotel, including the visa charges, everything we paid, including the local travel charges from their hometown to Beijing airport. So I organized everything. So similarly, the man who invited me to the 2000 conference, Abel Packer, he came from Brazil to give their experience. And 2 outstanding ladies, one person called Alma Swan from England, was a former biochemist or biotechnologist from Southampton, and another lady called Barbara Kissap, who passed away a few months ago. They came, and we produced what is called the Bangalore Declaration for Open Access, which unfortunately,
Bangalore Declaration.
yeah,
2005, which year?
2005 or 6. That I can check and tell you tomorrow.
Okay.
2005. You can even check on the net sometimes. Bangalore Declaration. That meeting, that was an outstanding meeting. Several professors from the Institute of Science attended the meeting, and you know this Lawrence Leong.
Yeah.
He gave a keynote about what is it called, shadow libraries and things like that. Actually, there's a shadow library meeting on the 12th. I'm attending that meeting on the net. Okay. So
what's a shadow library? What's a
shadow library? The concept is, there are several things which are not easily accessible. Either they are banned or they are proscribed, things like that, and or they are under copyright, and so it's not easily accessible. But make them available to people. That's shadow library. So they're very closely related to openness. Okay. I will send you a link. On the 12th, there's a meeting. It's about an hour or 2. I have it marked at 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. A shadow library, 6:30 p.m., 12th of May. In another 12th is today is 10th or 11th.
Today is the 11th actually.
Okay, tomorrow. The meeting is tomorrow. Yeah. Tomorrow. Tomorrow is the meeting. So I'll pass on the link after I finish the conversation here. You can register. So that meeting was one of the most successful meetings I organized, because it took the message to several countries, and of course it took time for everybody to actually do things about it, but they at least learned about open access and the importance of it and so on. Subsequently, I went to China 4 times to promote open access to the Chinese Academy and other organizations.
Did they catch the point fast?
There was a problem of language. So what I did was, in the Bangalore meeting, I nominated 4 or 5 students to sit by the side of those Chinese people. And then as when others speak 2-3 minutes, then they'll give a gist of that in very slow English. These people don't know Chinese. is a student, not Chinese. So uh, summarize what are the way we can to speak in Aachen, University in Aachen. Aachen University, though it is in Germany, is Andrew is from JMU? Is Andrew Lin from the Jawaharlal University? Okay. So can be known as Mr. India. And journalist called NDER. He is one of the most remarkable human beings, a very selfless journalist, and I think that would he doesn't work for any newspaper or magazine. He's self-employed and makes everything freely accessible. And there is a small footnote if you want to support by paying 8 pounds or something. But I don't think many people would do that, and at least not from our kind of countries. But he is doing that all the same, and his knowledge is amazing. He is a chronicler of the entire world's development of finance.
I see.
Yeah,
What's his name? Okay, what's his name?
Poindar, Poindar. We call him Ricky, R-I-C-K, Ricky. Like Ricky Cage of Bangalore, Ricky. So he's Richard, but we call him Ricky. The other one called Peter Suber, who is a full-fledged professor at Harvard. Center for International Society, Berkman Klein Center is called. He is a professor there. He is another person who is also chronicling. So, these are the two.
Open access.
Yeah, this is the most important book. It's written by 2 or 3 books. They are very important books. And we have to book. I should also mention another of mine called John Wilinski. Wilinski. He was in West Coast of Canada, British Columbia. Okay, he was Vancouver. He was there, but then he was invited to Stanford Department of Education. From Vancouver, he moved to Stanford. He has a book called Access or something. He is an outstanding, although he is a professor of education, he has done a lot of work watches, and his group has developed a software machine journals. It's called PKPAS. PKP is Public College for Public College. PKP. OJS, Open Journal Systems. Open Journal Systems. Now, OJS
Yes.
is being used
Let's
OJS is a software developed by a team of people working in mainly in two universities, Simon Fraser and British Columbia. The team is John Williams, and there are about 100 people, and they developed they set up this group called PKP, Public Knowledge Project. They and the early days they invited me, and others. And the first meeting or second meeting, they invited me. It's an annual event. They invited me. And then I came to know and this software is being now used by more than 25,000 journals. 25,000.
create a open access journal online.
You can try it. Now you can do it. You can do your own without any extra help. Everything is given there. Detailed instructions are there. PKP OJS. Yeah, you can start your own journal. There's no royalty, no thanks letter. You just do it. It's all free. Bother. You can book a library. So thank you. So that's the way it is. Just for free. Anybody can use it. Anybody can publish a journal. Anybody can. It's also
Here on India, which are the institutions which have done a good job in India? Open access.
you are putting a very difficult question. I should start from, okay. The first was, as I said, Institute of Science. It's not Institute of Science because the Institute did not do anything. It's all fancies. Okay. One man show. Okay. At best, we can do two-man show. Late Rajshekhar was with his department.
Yeah.
He was a contractor. Okay. The Institute did not care. Okay. Then, even though I am a professor, I am one of the DS COVID and all. But I'm sorry to say that the Institute did not care for the good workers. So, I knew the director, many of the senior professors, but these are things which you cannot say. Nothing would happen. Okay. Then one of my former colleagues at the actually after I discussed in library science, his professor asked me if I can find a job for him. Then I think I can improve sometime. On the research for a very low salary. Being an NGO, we cannot match the salary. He came. What he lost in salary, he did a lot. So I had a conference with me. Again, poorly, of course, because that's all they could afford. And they were all active in what is called mathematics, which is in Garfield papers.
What is that? What is it?
Science, measurement of science, measurement So I'm very in my computer skills. Most skills, but I just be able to use that.
Of course. You have many skills of your own.
I get somebody to assist me, then I can be part. If I have two students, I can be about 7% a year.
I think institutions like NIO and the Murari and all that have done a lot of open, no?
Who?
By sharing their oceanography in Goa.
I was responsible for that.
I see.
Photography,
Murari Tapasri, he still,
photography, he he was a librarian at that time, but he was a very dedicated librarian. He's not a very bright person. He's a very individual, not a very dedicated individual.
very
That's what library needs. Library does not need bright people. Physics needs bright people. Mathematics needs bright people. But library doesn't need bright people. Library needs honest people with integrity and who are willing to work hard. That's all we need. I give that. Murali Tapasri. I was his PhD examiner. Yeah, he submitted in Bangalore University, and I was his examiner. And then he came all around to give me a packet of sweets. What nonsense you do? So you don't do these things in academia. You don't do that. When I went to Goa, he took me home. I went to his home and I had lunch with him. It was typical Marathi lunch. With some tea and well, I'm vegetarian.
correct.
So, from his name, Apostoli, I think he can't be non-vegetarian. If he's performing Tapasri,
Right.
that's okay. He is a generation. This boy with me, his name is Muthu Madan.
Okay.
After Madan is now chief librarian in General Global University in Sonipat. Okay.
Yeah.
The name of Dr. Balaji. Balaji is Venkataraman Balaji. Kanpur, he came and did PhD with C.V. Seshadri, a very useless kind of scientist. He was MIT trained, working at Kanpur as a professor of chemical engineering, I guess. And then when he came back to Madras, he was very close to Amun family, Urugappa family. Very that family.
Right.
And they want to set up some kind of a laboratory for him. And he said, I don't want to convince you about it. It will be something very unusual. He found out a place close to the seashore and where he wanted to do work on designing boats for fishermen. Now, fishermen are using boats really good. They have so much energy to push the boat in the sea. So you want to lessen the things like that. And he started some work. And Balaji went to him for a PhD. And he assigned a project and he did a PhD there. So from IIT Kanpur, he became an NGO man. When he finished his PhD, Swaminathan continued NGO work. That is what I met him.
I remember Balaji. I remember Balaji.
Yeah.
I do remember.
Balaji.
Yeah.
Wonderful bright, very bright color. Brightest kids I have ever known in my life. Very
I
bright.
see.
A little, how to say, idiosyncrasies. I mean,
You all have that, yeah.
okay. Beautiful. He can shift the gears from academic research to people development in no time. Brilliant. Later on, he left for Swaminathan Foundation because I'm really had to support it the salary that we pay is so little. So he left us and went to first he went to France for 6 months, then he came to Hyderabad. And to be precise, he went to Commonwealth of India, where he is now in Kerala.
I see.
Yeah,
I see.
and he deserves to be. He's a very brilliant guy.
Yeah.
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 And he knows about music, he knows about so many
I
things. Every time I meet him, he shows a new face, which I had not known.
I see.
Variety of things he knows. Anyway, he started open access in because of my Hyderabad. I have been thinking about it. Sir, why don't you come and give a talk? And I went there. Then I said, look, I am not good at implementation. I'm an advocate, but if you want somebody to work with computers and show things, you should bring ARD Prasad. ARD Prasad is a computer guy, but teaching language and information science in a place called DRTC. DRTC is Documentation Research Training Center. It is part of the ISI, famous ISI technologies.
Bangalore.
Bangalore, that's the DRTC. It was followed what Ranganathan, the famous S.R. Ranganathan said, training. But he is not that kind of a librarian. He's a computer librarian. But he can figure out anything in computers, more than a regular computer engineer. So I said, you need both of them. Yeah. Myself and we had a 2-day meeting, and I talked to people, and then based on what we told them, we set up his own unit of open access for all the publications of Iksan. There are some problems initially because the general at that time is a Filipino, Dar. His name is Dar. He said, I am one of 15, 16 institutes, international
Around the world.
I want to do as application for others. So let's go each step. You do what you want to do will work. Okay. When the boss says he can't do much, he put some report and things. But and suddenly they found two of those reports. Then it became open access. Then he asked me, Balaji, put all the papers, forget about it in the institute, he said. Then started a report. Then I went again. I don't know the that. Then I told him, you are one of 16, you are the only one doing what I wrote a letter that IGCAR, International Governing Council of Agricultural Research, the trustees, chairman, board members, and all the individual letter, a personal letter, stating that look, the whole world is moving towards open knowledge. You are a publicly funded institution. It's a shame that you guys are not making your own papers open. Why don't you want to open access? Like one of your own organization, Hyderabad has already done. Experience that there are I knew before. I was on a board of an international organization in the Netherlands. The International Advisory Board for 8 or 9 years called IICD, International Institute of Development. In fact, Peter Ballantyne, the Scotsman, was there at the time. So he kept a library in one of those IGCR laboratories. He said, what are you doing? When we are all here, professional librarians, why are you opening your doors from outside? If you want to write to director to me, why do you write to my director on the board? Peter, I am not wrong. If you feel that I have done something sorry. Only one of them called helicopter was Italy in Rome. It was working. I can get it's the other university nearby. Yes. So she said that she is the son of she's working in the office.
This story is very interesting because it also shows how important information is and how important the free flow of information should be. But one last question before we face any net problem. One last question, what are the 5 most important tasks before open access in India today? What would be?
It's a sad story, very sad story. For more than 50 years, I have been writing to all the leaders of real science, BSIR, ICMR. I have written parliamentarians. I have written every party member I have written, parliamentarian, from CPM, CPI, Congress. I have written big partner at the in its of Madras. I went to myself. I said, I'm a party member. I don't look at it, even for my please join the parliament. I'm not sure. I know that ICS and I told him that assistant professor or associate professor at the time met him only. He told me he agreed. As he was coming out of the theater, I met him on the corridor. I said, I want to talk to you. So why don't you organize all the programs? Go ahead, he said. He said, go ahead. Then I proposed myself, and then the meeting was held. Very convenient because of the health. The meeting was always not in Delhi, but in class. He did that. So many people came to my class. And we luckily was this great man, Shahid Jamil. He is a very good person. He is now in Oxford. In India. And it was approved. And then I was simultaneously secretary for two departments, DST and DBT. So the DST secretary left. They didn't appoint. So they asked me to look after DST also. The two departments put together gave that was in 2014.
So I over the